Gopijana Palapa Giri Paratari Yasodanandana Prajajana Ranjana Yamunatira Panachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giri Bharatari Yasodanandana Prajajana Ranjana Yamunatira Panachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giri Bharatari Yasodanandana Prajajana Ranjana Yamunatira Panachari Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Kishore Kishori ki jai, Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Marani ki jai, Gonitai ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So this morning we actually had scheduled 2 verses 30 and 31, but yesterday our speaker was not well, so I'll be reading yesterday's verse, which is on the board, which is 28, and we'll do 29 and proceed through to 31. Katamindropi kurubir Bhishmadronarjunadibihi Adatam avarunditam Simhagrastam ivoranaha Katamindropi kurubir Bhishmadronarjunadibihi Adatam avarunditam Simhagrastam ivoranaha Katamindropi kurubir Bhishmadronarjunadibihi Adatam avarunditam Simhagrastam ivoranaha. Please chant. Katamindropi kurubir Bhishmadronarjunadibihi Adatam avarunditam Simhagrastam ivoranaha. Katamindropi kurubir Bhishmadronarjunadibihi Adatam avarunditam Simhagrastam ivoranaha. Oh, yeah, you did. That's right. I'm used to it the other way around. Thank you. Okay, so that was text 28. And okay. Okay, so the translation for text 28, I won't do the word for word because it wasn't my scheduled verse. So I'll just do the translation. How would even Indra dare usurp anything that Bhishma, Drona, Arjuna, or the other Kurus have not given him? It would be like a lamb claiming the lion's kill. And then text 29. Shri Badaraini Ruvacha Janma Bantu Shrionadaha Mada Te Bharata Shabha Ashravyaramam Dhruvarchyam Ashabhya Puram Avisan. And the translation for text 29 is as follows. These are the disciples of Srila Prabhupada. Sri Badarayani said, O best of the Bharatas, after the arrogant Kurus, thoroughly puffed up by the opulence of their high birth and relations, had spoken these harsh words to Lord Balaram, they turned and went back to their city. And text 30. Drishtva kurunam doshilyam Shrutva vachyam chakyutaha avokat kopas samro rabdo Dushprekshyat prahasan muhu. And the translation for text 30. Seeing the bad character of the Kurus and hearing their nasty words, the infallible Lord Balaram became filled with rage. His countenance frightful to behold, he laughed repeatedly and spoke as follows. And then text 31. Nunam nana madonna daha shantim ne chanti anadavaha tesham hi prasamo danda pashunam lagudo yatam. And the translation for text 31. Lord Balaram said, quote, "Clearly, the many passions of these scoundrels have made them so proud that they do not want peace. Then let them be pacified by physical punishment as animals are with a stick." Om Jnana-timirandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manopistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swam Rupa Kadamayam Tadati Swapadanti Kam Vandeham Shri Guru Shuta Padakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Ragutam Vitam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishaka Vitamscha. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bando Jagat Pate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapsa Kanchana Gorangi Radhe Vrindavan Ishvari Vishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Panchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Vacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnebhyo Namo Namaha. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Presnaya Bhutale Shrimati Romapada Swami Iti Namine Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Presnaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Okay. So I didn't do the word for the text assigned to me today since we didn't have those words on the board, but text 29 was there, so I apologize that it's like that. So I'm going to try to seek into my verses through also intertwining with the previous two verses of the speaker yesterday, since our esteemed speaker is ailing at the moment, unfortunately. So there's commentary on text 30. So that is just as a refresher. Seeing the bad character of the Kurus and hearing their nasty words, the infallible Lord Balaram became filled with rage. His countenance frightful to behold, he laughed repeatedly and spoke as follows. So Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur in Sarata Darshini, he states that, or he gives the internal processing of Lord Balaram. So to quote him, these are the thoughts of Lord Balaram. So in this circumstance, this is what Lord Balaram is thinking as per Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. Let them say and do what they want. He remained silent. And after the Kauravas had left, however, Balaram, in the presence of the city people, said and did what he wanted by showing his anger. So that was Kopa Samrabdho. So close quote, that was from Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. So the latter part of the Kuru's words which was in this text 28, is expressed by Srila Prabhupada in Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So that text 28 that's on the board, that was the latter part of the Kuru's words because they had made many statements. But that text 28, how would even Indra dare usurp anything that Bhishma, Drona, Arjuna, or the other Kurus have not given them? It would be like a lamb claiming the lion's kill. So this is Srila Prabhupada writing in Krishna book, where he's covering some of these, or this latter part of the Kuru's words to Lord Balaram. So this is Srila Prabhupada. The Yadu dynasty is now, this is the Kurus talking, the Yadu dynasty is now trying to go against those who have fed them so nicely. Their flourishing condition is due to our gifts and merciful behavior. And still they are so shameless that they are trying to order us. How regretful are all these activities. No one in the world can enjoy anything if members of the Kuru dynasty like Bhishma, Dronacharya, and Arjuna do not allow them to do so. Exactly as a lamb cannot enjoy life in the presence of a lion, without our desire, it is not even possible for the demigods in heaven, headed by King Indra, to find enjoyment in life, or to speak of ordinary human beings. So that's Srila Prabhupada putting across the words that were spoken to Lord Balaram by members of the Kuru dynasty. So if we look at these words, because that's the verse that's there, it would appear that what the Kurus hold as a value is something that is a matter of importance. So there's different ways that you might define a value. And from what the Kurus are saying here, the value is something that's a matter of importance to them. And what's a matter of importance to them is giving gifts and having merciful behavior. At least that's what they're expressing here. Another value that they hold may be reflected in what they express as a belief, because we're hearing the words that they're saying. So this is a belief that they're expressing. So it indicates it's a value they're holding. It's a belief they have. No one, not even the demigods, can enjoy anything unless it is by the will of the Kurus that they do so. Naturally, one may examine these values as expressed by the Kurus. We'd have to. So the value that appears to be expressed as a matter of importance of giving and having a merciful behavior, we can examine that. So there's a description of how it is that the Pandavas came to receive a portion of land to rule. So, because we're going to look at this supposed value that the Kurus are expressing, something that's important to them. They're so merciful, and they like to give gifts in charity. It was, in fact, Bhishma Dev's proposal to King Dhritarashtra, and he had proposed to King Dhritarashtra that there was a problem that needed to be resolved because he feared that stories would come to light regarding Dhritarashtra's son Dronacharya's intentions for the Pandavas at Varanasi. So this takes place after it comes to light that actually all the Pandavas had escaped from this house that had burst into flames in Varanasi. So there was a problem because people were beginning to speak ill of King Dhritarashtra. So Bhishma Dev proposed a solution for solving the problem. So this is what Bhishma Dev tells King Dhritarashtra. These are his words. Since the fire, people have accused you and of the Pandavas' deaths, and they continue to speak ill of you. We don't want to fight with the Pandavas. Krishna would certainly come to their aid. Together, Krishna and Arjuna are invincible. They are the legendary Nara and Narayan of old, the manifestation of man and God together to divide the kingdom in two is the only fair and honorable path. Yudhisthira can rule one part, and your son Duryodhan can rule the other half. The citizens will be pleased by this arrangement, and you'll be freed from the stigma attached to your good name. Life is short. In the end, all that remains is one's honor and reputation. This settlement will ensure the peace and prosperity of our dynasty and will give you a place of distinction for generations to come. Close quote. So those were the words of Bhishma Dev to King Dhritarashtra, and was with finding a solution for the fact that naturally there was a lot of suspicion around him, and people were beginning to speak ill of him directly because there was a suspicion that naturally his son was involved in the fire that had taken place in Varanasi, and the Pandavas were presumed to be dead. So, and it comes to light that the Pandavas haven't actually died in the fire, but it doesn't change the people's attitude towards King Dhritarashtra and their suspicions. So this is the solution that Bhishma Dev is proposing. And then it's very interesting. What immediately follows on this proposal is one of the same Kurus that are present and have spoken to Balaram here. One of them was Karna. Karna responds to this advice coming from Bhishma Dev. And this is what his response is. He sees that his close ally, my mind's gone blank, Dhritarashtra's son, is a little disturbed. And so this is what Karna says. He starts to recall an ancient history. So he starts to tell the story. There once lived a king. You may know his name, Ambuvicha. The king was lazy by nature and not inclined to rule. He let his trusted minister make his decisions for him. Without the king's knowing it, the minister slowly began to usurp his wealth, his power, his prosperity, and even his wives. But ultimately, without any effort of his own, the king kept his power and his kingdom. The king was indeed a lucky man. It was fate that intervened on his behalf. And here's Karna's conclusion to the story, addressing King Dhritarashtra. But sire, I wouldn't sit back and depend upon luck. I would firmly grab hold of my destiny and sovereignty. These statesmen who advise you may seem like trusted friends, but I say they are leading you astray. So imagine, these are the words of Karna in the presence of Bhishma Dev and Drona. And he's actually implying that Bhishma Dev is leading Dhritarashtra astray. Imagine. So, what happens is that King Dhritarashtra actually does give land to the Pandavas. And this land is described that he gives to the Pandavas. So this is all in considering, because we're looking at, do the Kurus hold this value? Is it a matter of importance to them to give in charity? So we're considering one such occasion that from the external you could consider, it was a charitable act. But we analyzing it. So here's the land that King Dhritarashtra gave to the Pandavas. This is a description. In times long ago, the king who ruled the region that the Pandavas obtained became consumed by greed. The rishis had cursed him as well as the land, and since then, no one wanted to live there. Animals wouldn't go there. Birds wouldn't even fly over it. For generations, the land and the king's palace lay ruined and abandoned. A dry, hot wind constantly battered the landscape. Now, this land belonged to the Pandavas. So that's a description given of this supposedly charitable act performed on the part of the Kurus, or the Kuru dynasty. So this description that I've read to you comes from Mahabharata, a kind of shortened version by Sankirtan Das, one of my favorites, I'm afraid, because I taught children from it quite a bit, so I really appreciate the writing. So now there's an additional note that one can make on the value of mercifulness, because this is the other value that the Kurus were expressing, and it's appeared that this was a value that they held, that they were merciful. So if we look at that, this arrangement that had preceded this supposedly charitable act of giving this land to the Pandavas that was completely inhospitable, and it was in order to actually help King Dhritarashtra not have the citizens stop speaking ill of him because there was so much suspicion around him and his involvement in the house in Varanasi having burst into flames. So looking at the value of mercifulness, there was the arrangement of Duryodhana to have the Pandavas use a summer house. And this is what the Pandavas discovered when they were in the house. And this is quoting Mahabharata. They examined the house and discovered layers of boards soaked in scented oil or coated with flammable materials behind the walls and underneath the floors. So one can question, where was the mercifulness in the arrangement being made by Duryodhana to have the Pandavas use a vacation house in Varanasi, when clearly everything was set up to bring their demise. So that's examining these two values that the Kurus were expressing, that they basically held, mercifulness and being charitable. Now, the second value that the Kurus are expressing is in the form of a belief, and that they said that not even the demigods can derive enjoyment unless it is by their desire, the Kuru's desire. So we can examine this one too. Now, in relation to the demigods, just looking at the demigods, Lord Krishna explains that he explains this nature of enjoyment on the part of the demigods. So this is what Krishna says, quoting him. When they have thus enjoyed vast heavenly sense pleasure, and the results of their pious activities are exhausted, they return to the mortal plane again. Thus, those who seek sense enjoyment by adhering to the principles of the Vedas achieve only repeated birth and death. So that's a statement Krishna makes, 9:22 Bhagavad Gita, that looks at the demigods and their position. So the Kurus are announcing that actually it's by their will that the demigods are able to even have sense enjoyment. And this is what Krishna is saying. That indeed the demigods have great facilities for sense enjoyment and they have a longer duration of life, but this is the fruit of their own pious activities. So it's not connected to the will of the Kurus by a long stretch. It's the fruit of their own pious activities. Now, Srila Prabhupada writes in Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because we've just examined what the Kurus have seem to indicate are values that are important to them, because they're announcing it of themselves. And this they announced to Lord Balaram. And here's Srila Prabhupada doing a conclusion, you could say, of what the position of the Kurus actually is. This is Srila Prabhupada. Actually, the members of the Kuru dynasty were very much puffed up due to their opulence, kingdom, aristocracy, family traditions, great warriors, family members, and vast, expansive empire. So Srila Prabhupada pins it down to pride. It's actually, they were incredibly proud, and then there's that listing of what they were proud of. So there's a further point made by Srila Prabhupada, and this is quoting him. They did not even observe common formalities of civilized society in the presence of Lord Balaram. They uttered insulting words about the Yadu dynasty. So that's Srila Prabhupada's statement, where there is kind of like, you could say, the concluding remark of what was the actual position of these Kurus. So if we step back and we think, what is the protocol? Because that's what Srila Prabhupada is saying. They offered insulting words. They didn't even go through normal civilized formalities. So what is the protocol for somebody in the royal order? And this is one of the listings of protocol for somebody in the royal order. So I'm reading it. Never suggest harm to a person with whom the king is well pleased, or display the greatness of your own functions. Note. Note. So in this examination that we've been trying to do of the values held by the Kurus, supposedly held by them, the response of Kana that I recited to you at the time when there was going to be a supposedly generous giving of half the land that was in the possession of the family for the Yadu dynasty to rule, there was a response of Kana, and what it reveals is exactly this lack of propriety. I mean, he actually is insulting the eldest member of that dynasty, Bhishma Dev, who was offering very sane advice, and it was to actually help the king. And he's actually saying that, the advisor is going to lead you astray, King Dhritarashtra. So it reveals this complete lack of propriety. And there's a similar lack of conformity with what is proper when one looks at the response of the Kurus after Lord Balaram tells them this. So this was Lord Balaram's initial statement when he arrived at the kingdom of the Kurus. And he said this: King Ugrasena is our master and the ruler of kings. With undivided attention, you should hear what he has ordered you to do, and then you should do it at once. Even though by irreligious means several of you defeated a single opponent who follows the religious codes, still I am tolerating this for the sake of unity among family members. So here's Lord Balaram delivering a message to the Kurus. It has reached the Yadava dynasty that young Samba, who had kidnapped Lakshmana from his Swayamvara ceremony, and who had then valiantly been confronted by 6 of the Kurus, Kana being one of them, he had actually was able to send an arrow to each of those 6 chariots, each of the 6 horses, each of the 6 bowmen, and each of the 6 warriors. He did it in one foul swoop. But they then transgressed religious codes, because generally each of those warriors were able to fight 1,000 men. They were Maharatas, and it was the same with Samba, but he was not one against one. It was 6 of them against him, and they came up from behind him and they forced him down from his chariot. So this is what Lord Balaram is referring to when he says that King Ugrasena has sent him to deliver this message, and King Ugrasena is saying, for the purpose of, family relationships, we're going to tolerate this, even though we know that it was going against proper religious conduct, what was done by way of this young man, Samba, from the Yadu dynasty. So that was earlier on in the this same chapter, this description of what the message was that Lord Balaram delivered to the Kurus. Now, their response is indeed one that exactly transgresses this proper code of conduct for somebody in the royal order. Because what did they do? They started to display their own greatness and the greatness of their own functions. I mean, we heard in the verse that was there, 29, that that's precisely what they did. Starting to speak about how even the demigods, never mind human beings, they couldn't get any sense enjoyment unless it was by their will. So they're displaying their greatness, or greatness of their own functions as they see it. So Lord Balaram now, he responds, because we've looked at the supposed values that the Kurus are expressing. We've looked at the message that Lord Balaram brought. We've looked at how it is that the codes of behavior need to be on the part of those in the royal order. And clearly, the Kurus were not adhering to proper formal functioning or of codes of behavior, which is what Srila Prabhupada's statement was in Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And now it is that Lord Balaram shows his anger. And what does he do? You see how proper the behavior is? The Kurus depart. Lord Balaram, we hear what Srila Vishwanath says his internal thought is. It's when they've departed that then he displays his anger. And Srila Vishwanath comments this. Balaram said, so this is the point when Balaram, the Kurus have left. Lord Balaram is with the city people. And here Srila Vishwanath comments that Balaram said the following. Because the Kauravas are puffed up by their wealth and other assets, only physical punishment, danda, will pacify, and the word was prasama, their pride. Sama, dana, and other forms of negotiation will not work. So there was not going to be some sort of reaching a fine agreement through dialogue. That was not going to take place. Or some sort of charitable exchange was not going to be done. He concluded that because they were so proud of their wealth and their other assets, it was only going to be by physical punishment that their pride could be cut down. So Srila Prabhupada notes the following. Meaning this particular part that I've just recited. So although Lord Balaram patiently heard their insulting words and simply observed their uncivil behavior, from his appearance, it was clear that he was burning with anger and was thinking of retaliating with great vengeance. And that's a description we read. His bodily features became so much agitated that it was difficult for anyone to look at him. He laughed and said, this is Lord Balaram's words, "It is true that if a man becomes too much puffed up because of his family, opulence, beauty, and material advancement, he no longer wants a peaceful life, but becomes belligerent towards all others. It is useless to give such a person good instruction. For gentle behavior and a peaceful life, on the contrary, one should search out the ways and means to punish him. So Lord Balaram reaches his conclusion. And that's Srila Prabhupada giving the words of Lord Baladev. So he clearly saw that there was not going to be any possibility of trying to instruct them. He had arrived, given an instruction from King Ugrasena, and he concluded it's actually going to be useless to give them good instruction that will allow them to display gentle behavior or to actually allow for a peaceful life. On the contrary, because of their pride in their wealth, they were just belligerent towards everyone. And so his duty now was just to search for a means to punish them. So that was Lord Balaram's conclusion. So Srila Prabhupada comments, and this is in Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Generally, due to material opulence, a man becomes exactly like an animal. Now, this is very interesting, isn't it? To give an animal peaceful instructions is useless. And the only means to keep the animal in order is a stick. So that's very interesting. You don't generally think of an extremely wealthy person as somebody who needs to be have a stick, be beaten by a stick. But if the person is actually degraded himself to being like an animal because of that belligerence practiced towards others based on the pride of their wealth, then actually it's useless to actually try and have some exchange that brings about some sort of peaceful solution. So in considering the problem at hand, Lord Balaram takes everything relevant into account. So he takes into account this material opulence of the Kurus, and naturally some considerations can be more important than others, but they've become, so this is a consideration he's giving, they've become just like animals. And when one gives consideration, some things become very decisive, and these are the criteria by which you decide what your course of action is going to be. So the criteria needed is to keep an animal in order. That's what's needed. So Lord Balaram reaches a decision, and this is his judgment. A stick is needed or punishment is needed. Royal protocol generally identifies the superior person. And quoting, the inferior man does not know what ought to be done, but boasts of what has been done by others and claims himself to be equal. That's a definition also in looking at royal protocol, that the inferior man does not know what needs to be done, but boasts of what has been done by others and claims himself to be an equal. So notice, this is like such an insight that paints the perfect picture of what the position is of the Kurus, that they're actually boasting of their wealth, their opulence, etc. But in fact, all of that is not rightfully theirs. It actually belongs to the Yadu dynasty. And then they're claiming that they're so generous, so merciful, because they've actually bequeathed some land. See how merciful they were to the Yadus. And they're claiming themselves to be equal to the Yadus. So this particular insight into royal protocol is so interesting. The inferior man does not know what ought to be done, but boasts of what has been done by others and claims himself to be equal. So, and then it continues, the superior man does not reveal what he has done or what he's going to do. He does it. You notice Lord Balaram was silent. We just heard what his internal processing is. Let them do and say what they want. And so he doesn't say what he's going to do, he just does it. And we're going to hear how he does it, how he verbalizes piece by piece the particular claims made by the Kurus. So, indeed, a superior person is the guru, and that's the position of Lord Balaram. He's a spiritual master. And if one wants to know that which is unknown to oneself, then one accepts the superior man, the guru. And that particular understanding is Tadvignatam Sagurum Eva Abhigachet. And Srila Prabhupada states that guru means heavy or superior. That is the law. So Lord Balaram came trying to bring law through quoting what the conclusion was of King Ugrasena, who he stated was actually superior to all the kings. And as the spiritual master, he's delivering the message, and then we hear the response of the Kurus, completely overriding normal civil behavior and claiming themselves to be equal to the Yadus and attributing all, expressing things that supposedly were values they held, but through analysis you understand that actually they're just boasting of what are qualities of others and claiming themselves to be equal. So these are some thoughts on these two verses that I had scheduled today, and also trying to include the two from yesterday. If there's any thought to expand the discussion, please feel free.
Thank you for your class. There's a lot of stuff going on in that I have to go back and kind of pay more attention to and study. So I miss a lot of it. But one thing I did catch was about the superior man does not kind of speak on the things that he's done. Is it that sometimes what I thought was that sometimes, like the guru or someone who's done so many things may give a little bit of mercy by speaking on a few things, maybe are they speaking like in a general sense? He doesn't speak on what he's done, but in some circumstances he may speak a little something as a being like a bit of mercy to tell a little bit about the his personal self, just as a feature of his mercy.
Well, the statement is said that the superior man doesn't speak about what he's done, he just does it. So, and the inferior man will be the one who's standing and boasting, not necessarily even about what he's done, but what somebody else has done and taking it to be his own. So, if one is blind to what the spiritual master is doing, and it takes a long time to understand because so much work has been done and it's not been advertised. So it requires intelligence to understand, like for instance, I understand that my spiritual master has built up numerous communities quietly in the background, like created communities of devotees and brahmanas. And probably the persons that are part of those communities don't even know how it all came about. But if one steps back and analyzes that there was nothing there at some moment in time, and then through constant cultivation, persons being visited, persons coming together, persons practicing Krishna consciousness together, eventually a temple even comes up. And that is the work of the spiritual master. But it's not advertised. And in fact, it may not even be so visible for those that are happily engaged in their devotional activities. It's the much broader picture. It requires intelligence to understand. And the point is the spiritual master doesn't speak about what he's doing. He just proceeds to do that. So, I mean, I've observed it of my spiritual master that indeed communities are built up and temples have come because of that careful work and cultivation that's done, that's part of his work. And the only statement that I've ever heard him say was he's able to do his work because the devotees do their work. So he's attributing his ability to do his work to the fact that the devotees perform their work and their duties. So that's the furthest acknowledgement or a statement that's made in relation to his work. And if there's a misunderstanding, perhaps once I recall there was some misunderstanding of a work that he was performing in relation to one temple, because there was some contention as to whether that temple building should be sold and another one purchased in a different part of the city. And he was in agreement that it could be sold, but Srila Prabhupada generally wanted the buildings never to be sold. So then there were questions raised about the position he was taking. So once he actually did explain to all his disciples what his position had been, and it was a special gesture on his part to give that explanation. Yeah, so that was because there were questions, and he was being cast in a poor light. So it became necessary to to some degree to explain his position. So that was the only time I've known of, and yeah. But then one understands what the motive is all the time. The motive is to integrate communities, allow them to flourish. That's his work. So, yeah, it requires intelligence to see it. Yeah. But thank you for your question. All right. Thank you very much for your kind attention. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Shampa Swami ki jai. Thank you, Vaishnava Sivananda.